Now to a CBC News exclusive. An investigation is underway into a suspected cross-border smuggling operation. A police force in Ontario has already charged an officer with bringing $500,000 worth of drugs across the border. Now, Niagara Regional Police are looking into the activities of other officers. Our Dave Seglins is tracking the story, and he joins us now. So, Dave, this is quite the story. How did the drug smuggling operation first come to light?
Well, it was border officials. There's something called the Border Enforcement Security Task Force, made up by Department of Homeland Security in the U.S., immigration officials, as well as some Canadian Border Services, the RCMP. They caught on to the fact that there were some shipments, parcels going through courier services in the United States where they detected some drugs. They were being sent to a private mailbox outlet on the Buffalo and the New York side of the border. They began monitoring this private mailbox to see who was coming to pick up these packages. And lo and behold, it turns out it was a man named Jeffrey Purdy, who they've arrested in April. And he is a constable with the Niagara Regional Police Service, 13 years. And they have charged him with conspiracy to export controlled substances and to distribute. Now, these drugs, some of them were Valium. Some of them included the ingredient to make the date rape drug. But largely it was testosterone and other anabolic steroids that the authorities contend were being brought across the border. And what's more, the investigation continues as to where those drugs went once they got here and whether there was any involvement of other police officers on the Canadian side.
So, Dave, what's the latest on this?
Well, we've learned that within the detachment where Jeffrey Purdy, the accused constable, is in Fort Erie, that's right across the Niagara River from Buffalo, there have been some shakeups. There have been some officers reassigned. We know that Purdy has been suspended with pay, and a second officer has been suspended. The police chief in Niagara Region confirms that there is ongoing investigation, and he's pledging an investigation into any steroid use by police officers, which isn't necessarily illegal, but the trafficking and the distribution is, which means police officers, anyone who's engaged in that, is tying themselves to some supply of steroids, be it for bodybuilding or what have you. Now, we should say that Purdy hasn't really had a chance to respond to these charges. He was released from American custody. He is due back in court in the U.S. In October.
Okay, Dave, thanks so much. That's our Dave Seglins in Toronto. Well, the images are tough to watch. A Vancouver police officer kicking a handcuffed suspect in the chest as he lies on the ground. It was all caught on camera by a CBC producer, and the video has motivated police to launch an investigation and remove the officer from active duty. Our Eric Rankin has the details.
The takedown occurred around 8:15. Police cars, marked and unmarked, swooping into the exclusive neighborhood. They arrest a man in his underwear, asking him if he has a gun and questioning him about drugs. The man in handcuffs doesn't struggle, but as a CBC producer films the scene, a plainclothes officer makes a surprising move. The kick is hard enough to snap the suspect's head back. He falls to one side, still handcuffed. The BC Civil Liberties Association says that is excessive force, and the officer involved could be charged.
Well, I think there are some very serious questions about whether or not this was, in fact, a criminal act, an assault.
And EB says the incident must be investigated.
When you have somebody who's not a threat and very clearly not a threat, and you use force, there's no legal authority to do that. And so that then needs to be investigated under the criminal code, and the VPD and the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner should be having a look at this.
People on the street agree.
I'm thoroughly offended for that man, and I hope he gets retribution for that.
It's not going to stop me from trusting them. I'm just not going to trust them quite as much anymore.
EB says police officers are authorized to use physical violence only when their safety or the safety of the public is at risk. Their goal is to de-escalate situations, not ramp them up. EB says this case shows a complete failure of police training and lessons not learned from other cases of excessive force caught on camera.
This is somebody who's handcuffed, virtually naked, sitting on the sidewalk, and getting kicked, and that's not acceptable.
Vancouver police reacted to our video, announcing an investigation.
Because we take these allegations extremely seriously, and that's why we've taken immediate action.
An outside police force is now being called in to investigate if criminal charges should be laid against the Vancouver officer involved. The case is also being reviewed by the VPD's Professional Standards Unit, and the 10-year veteran has now been removed from active duty, pending the results of the investigations. Eric Rankin, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's outrage today over a violent clash between workers and police at a South African mine. Police opened fire on striking miners, killing more than 30 people in a brutal scene captured on camera. It's stirring up grim memories of the days of apartheid in that country, and we'll warn you, the pictures we're going to show are quite graphic. Our Michael Serapio is here with the...
Because they were trying to break up two unions that were fighting at the mine, and they'd been fighting for the past week, and 10 people had died in that fighting. So police showed up to try to separate the members of these two unions. But when they tried to put up a barbed wire barricade, apparently, according to witnesses, some of those miners started to rush the police. Some of them were carrying machetes. Others say that some miners were actually carrying guns, and they were the first ones to shoot at the police, although that still needs to be verified. What we do know, though, is whoever began the shooting, that led to a huge barrage of bullets from police. And the scene that we're about to show you, and again, this is very graphic images for people at home, but do take a listen as to what happened at Marikana, South Africa. Now, that whole scene, Dave, took only about 3 minutes for police to fire their bullets, but by the end of it, dozens of people, miners, were left on the ground. Several people were dead. Pools of blood were witnessed just about everywhere around that mine. Now, the numbers have been fluctuating ever since this took place yesterday, but the latest update that we have from South Africa's police ministry say that 34 miners were killed, 78 miners injured.
Michael, I actually flinched back from the monitor when I saw them open fire. I mean, what's the reaction been in South Africa?
Well, you're not the only one that's flinching, Dave. Certainly a lot of people are outraged by this in South Africa. A lot of people are saying that there needs to be accountability held in this case. What we will say is while many people have been quick to condemn what took place, one newspaper, the Sowetan, and that is one of the largest and more influential papers in South Africa, it has gone one step even further, saying what took place at Marikana really calls into question the type of progress, perhaps lack of progress, that South Africa has made ever since the end of apartheid. Take a listen to what they wrote in their editorial pages. Again, this from the Sowetan. This is an abnormal country in which all the fancy laws are enacted and the Constitution is hailed as the best on earth. All the right noises are made, and yet the value of human life, especially that of the African, continues to be meaningless. And we will say that the South African president has promised a full investigation, and already 200 people, more than 200 people, have been arrested, Dave.
Okay, Michael, thanks so much.
You're welcome.